Both the Human Rights Campaign and Planned Parenthood has endorsed Hillary Clinton in defiance of the will of their members. Now, when asked why he thinks they endorse Hillary Clinton over himself, Bernie Sanders had this to say.
So I have friends and supporters in the Human Rights Fund, in Planned Parenthood. But you know what? Hillary Clinton has been around there for a very, very long time, and some of these groups are, in fact, part of the establishment.
Now, the fact that he referred to these interest groups as establishment actually struck a chord with some people. Hillary Clinton tweeted out, "Really, Senator Sanders? How can you say that groups like PPAC and HRC are part of the establishment you are taking on?" Okay, but we'll continue. Planned Parenthood joined in and states, "We respect Senator Sanders, disappointed to be called establishment as we fight like hell to protect women's health." And finally, the Human Rights Campaign, of course, had to join in this big circle jerk. So they state, "We share PPAC's disappointment in Sanders' attacks. Human Rights Campaign has proudly taken on the establishment and fought for LGBT people for over 30 years. So clearly, they took this as an attack. But Bernie Sanders later walked back his comment and states that he does not think that groups like Planned Parenthood, NARAL, HRC are part of the establishment after all. Take a look.
What I said in response to a question about endorsements is, I think, what I meant to say anyhow, is that sometimes the grassroots are asking, how does it happen if somebody has a 100% voting record in support of your issue and doesn't get endorsed? And that sometimes the leadership of an organization may look at the world a little bit different than the grassroots. But in terms of those organizations, I know we're a week out in an election and the Clinton people will try to spin these things. I am a fierce supporter of Planned Parenthood, NARAL, and gay rights in this country.
And they're not part of the establishment?
No, they are standing up and fighting the important fights that have to be fought.
Well, unfortunately, now I disagree with you, Bernie Sanders. You were correct the first time. You didn't have to concede on this point. You see, of course it's the case that the grassroots parts of these organizations are not part of the establishment. But I mean, the individuals who head these organizations are very much part of this establishment. And the fact that they are interest groups makes them by definition establishment. I mean, they perpetuate the status quo in Washington, the give and take that is between interest groups and politicians. But that doesn't make them inherently evil because, I mean, of course, they're actually fighting for noble causes. Nobody's disagreeing with that. Nobody's saying they should be disbanded. Nobody wants to actually take them on. But I mean, to say that these organizations are not part of the establishment because we agree with them is like saying the NRA is not part of the Republican establishment. It very much is. I mean, it's in the pockets of every Republican. It very much controls the Republican Party. So it doesn't change the fact that, you know, they're not establishment because we agree with them. That doesn't matter. The fact is that they are part of the establishment. So the question is, what the hell is the political establishment anyway? So, I mean, if you go to a definition, Wikipedia states, the establishment generally denotes a dominant group or elite that holds power or authority in a nation or organization. The establishment may be a closed social group which selects its own members as opposed to selection by merit or election or specific entrenched elite structures either in government or in specific institutions.
But are you the establishment?
I just don't understand what that means. He's been in Congress. He's been elected to office a lot longer than I have. I was in the Senate for 8 wonderful years representing New York. He's been in the Congress for 25, and so I'll let your viewers make their own judgment.
The length of time that you spend in Congress will not determine whether you are or are not part of the political establishment. What determines whether or not you're part of that political establishment is if you are benefiting from all these backroom deals, if you're benefiting from the cronyism and the nepotism in Washington. If you know someone, you get ahead. If you do something for someone, they return the favor for you. It's just this big circle jerk. So what do you have to do to determine which groups are and aren't part of the establishment? I mean, you have to see which ones are most entrenched in the status quo. Who can influence these politicians the best? Who can influence these political rich elites the best? Planned Parenthood is a very powerful interest group. They are able to get the Democratic Party to answer to their beck and call. When Planned Parenthood says jump, the Democratic Party says how high. Now, this is because they spend millions lobbying. Now, when it comes to the Human Rights Campaign, they spend hundreds of thousands lobbying. So it's not necessarily a bad thing because what they're lobbying for, it's not a bad cause. But that doesn't negate from the fact that they are part of that Washington political establishment. So being part of the establishment, you know, it's not necessarily bad. It's not inherently evil. It's only evil because most of the time, you know, it resorts to favoritism, cronyism, you know, nepotism. They're all in it, it seems, for, you know, personal gain. And so I think that the real crux of the problem with these endorsements from Planned Parenthood and HRC is that these are, you know, the most noble interest groups in the country, some of the most noble, right? So I expect them, more than the other interest groups, to kind of not put themselves first, not for the board of directors of the Human Rights Campaign to put their own interests first. I would expect them to do what they purport to do, which is support human rights and stand up for human rights. But they don't want to do that because that personal interest is just so strong. So the problem is that the current political establishment is biased towards special interests. So, I mean, it doesn't matter that I have a particular LGBT rights issue in mind. I could donate $5 to Hillary Clinton. That's not going to get me a seat at the table, but to actually raise money for Hillary Clinton and lobby her and whatnot and donate millions to her campaign, well, that's going to get me a seat at the table, and perhaps she could reward me. I mean, look at Barack Obama. So there's a guy named Ted Wheeler, right? So he was the former lobbyist for Comcast. He donated hundreds of thousands to Barack Obama's campaign, and all of a sudden, he is appointed as the head of the FEC. So this is what happens all the time. This is all part of the political establishment. It's one big circle jerk that everyone else is excluded from. So to state that two of the most powerful interest groups in the country, the Human Rights Campaign and Planned Parenthood, are part of the establishment, well, it's not an attack. It's just a fact.